What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Aussie Champ, in the building, in the place where all great things happen, honestly. I mean, it's the HyperX arena, the pinnacle of esports, of creativity, of all things in that industry. And today, I have somebody that's really at the forefront of giving an honest review, and that's Joe Bradford from mmorpg.com. He's the chief editor there currently, and I'm very lucky to get a moment of your time. I know you're so busy between all the things that you have to not only play and write about, but also just to do in your day-to-day. You're a father, you're a gamer yourself, so I'm really interested to get to pick your brain today. How are you feeling, brother?
I feel like the energy levels are like you're up here, and I'm like way down here right now.
I love it. It's like... It's like where brackish water meets.
Yeah, pretty much. Like this is the estuary of energy levels. I'm doing all right. It's good to be here. I watched your first episode that's out right now, and I like the format. I like the fact that you're bringing in not just creators but some locals as well. To talk about this industry. And this is a city that should be known more for its gaming industry, and it's really not. So I feel like a show like this is incredibly important to kind of shine a light on that, especially considering, it's one of the nicest arenas on this side of the country.
Hey, we appreciate the compliment. You heard it here from the man who's been around a lot of places. You're traveling often. I see you at conventions. I see you all the things that are happening to get your angle.
So to give you an idea, like from the end of July until about 2 weeks ago, I think I spent maybe 3 weeks at home.
Sheesh.
I went to LA like 4 or 5 times. I went to Iceland. I went to Canada.
How was that Iceland trip?
Iceland is great. It's my 4th time there.
Yeah, I know. I've seen you go there pretty frequently.
Yeah, I went there back in like 2017, 2018. Then they took a few years break. Obviously, COVID happened, so they couldn't do anything there. And then we went again last year, and then this year for eFanFest. So like, think about it this way: I'm literally flying to a rock in the middle of the Atlantic to talk about internet spaceships.
Wonderful.
What a job.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of people wish that they had that path, or they were able to have a seat at that table. So you've been there for a while now. Where does your gaming background come from? Like where did your first love for games start?
So funnily enough, so we grew up together. Let's just get that out of the way. I've known you since you were knee high to a grasshopper.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So you're what, 25, 26 now?
27.
27. Okay, so I'm only 8 years older than you.
8 years older than
but I remember us growing up in church, playing games together.
Yeah.
Smash Brothers was our jam.
You know what I'm saying?
That all the time. But for me,
got to play that on a couple episodes ago, if y'all remember that. But
yeah. So for me, gaming really started when I was, I was living in Michigan. I was probably 4 or 5 years old. My uncle had a regular Nintendo, like the original OG Nintendo. And I would sit up late at night at my grandma's house where he was living at the time and just play like Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy on that thing. I'd play Mario, Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past. And that's kind of where it started. But it didn't really take off until we were living in Manch Manor. My dad bought his computer.
Okay, you had a PC in the house.
Yeah, my dad had a PC, and we were playing games like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. We were playing Dungeon Keeper before EA ruined it. We were playing games like Age of Empires was like huge.
Yes.
I had 6.5 hour long games.
The first time I played Age of Empires was on I feel like on that PC.
Yeah, probably.
I feel like that is the facts. Yeah, that is
probably
such a good game.
But like the game that really made me want to be a gamer for the rest of my life, I kind of realized that games were more than just entertainment. It could be an art form. It could be a form of storytelling. And I think a lot of people my specific age will have this exact same answer. It's either Final Fantasy VII or it's Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Those both came out the same year. And we had a tradition in my family where when you had birthdays, certain birthdays, you got certain presents. So when you turned 13, you got your first TV for your bedroom. When you turned 16, you got your first computer.
That's awesome.
I turned down the TV because I wanted Legend of Zelda. So I told my parents, just buy me Zelda. I'll get the TV next year. I'll get it for Christmas or whatever.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure they were still going to buy me one, and I was right. But I spent that entire 1997 summer playing Legend of Zelda. And it kind of blew my mind. It changed how I looked at games. It changed how I approached them. And from that point forward, it was not so much just about having fun. It was like, okay, what is this game telling me? What is it trying to do? What does it mean? And that's also around the same time you had a lot of games trying to tell stories, not just entertain. Final Fantasy VII, if you look at it, it's a very heavy-handed synopsis on climate change.
Right. Yeah. Essentially.
But like when you're 10 years old, that's completely over your head.
Yeah. Who cares? I'm just trying to fight these baddies.
Exactly.
Real quick, right?
But if you actually look at the story, like the developers are telling you something. They're like actually trying to make a point. So that's about that time where games became more than just games. It became art. But even then, like I didn't think about making this a career. You know me, I wanted to be a musician.
Yeah. What? So you're playing games. You got your first love you said 97.
Yeah,
this was.
pretty much.
And that's you realize, hey, gaming is where I find I want to lay my hat. Even, or did you just? It was like your big hobby. You weren't even really thinking about careers at this time.
No, it was a hobby.
You're a young
it was
person.
It was fun. I mean, we grew up playing games, like multiplayer games in the family with all the friends and stuff. You were coming over to the house.
Yeah.
I was going to your house to play games. But like, it wasn't anything more than that. It was just a pastime. Yes, I was starting to understand, more of the themes and the broader arcs that these developers are trying to tell. But even then, it was like, okay, this is just what I do to pass time, to de-stress. It wasn't until, like, funnily enough, the Kinect got announced.
That was the Xbox
I was like,
add-on, correct?
The original 360 Kinect.
Yeah.
That I was like, okay, I kind of want to write about this. I kind of want to like dissect what they're trying to do here. And at that point, I was pretty much like disillusioned with the whole idea of becoming a musician. I've been working at a music store for 10 years. I had met most of the pro musicians here in town because they'd all come to the store, and every single one of them did not look like anybody I wanted to become.
Man, that's a real. You look up the ladder sometimes, and
pretty
you're
much.
Is this really where am I trying to be up? Where
pretty
they
much.
Don't seem happy, or they don't seem like they have the life that I want. So that's a really wise thing that you noticed.
And so like you could make a free blog on WordPress back. I mean, you still can, but back then that's kind of where you did it. And so I just started writing about the Kinect. And I got really into the Lord of the Rings scholarship scene as well, which was really a weird crossover. Like if you think of the Venn diagram of like game reviewers, you don't usually have Lord of the Rings scholarship and like video games kind of mixing, but I'm right there in the middle.
That's awesome though.
Because the first like gig I got was to write about Lord of the Rings online for a Lord of the Rings based website.
That's awesome.
So
and
it's
how
a
long
weird
were you
transition.
doing that first gig that you got as a writer? And kind of what even were you just a proficient writer kind of growing up? Were you always kind of taking English a bit serious? And
so funnily enough,
reading
my 10th grade English teacher, I remember this vividly because I was right next to my mom when she said this, but she walked up to my mother at like an open house at Rancho and was like, I got to talk to you about your son. My mother thinking, this is the problem child, of course. What's going on?
There's Joe.
And apparently it was to compliment me because there hadn't been a single book that she'd assigned that I hadn't already read. I was 2 years ahead of the reading list for
Tyrion
English.
Lannister.
Pretty much.
Your family.
I drink and I know things.
Yeah,
kind of thing, and so like for me, like reading English, I was always writing. I was writing books when I was like 8 years old. It was always one of those things I loved to do, but I've never actually had any formal training doing it. I still don't, now that I think about it. So it just kind of came naturally,
It's your place.
I don't feel like I'm the most well-spoken person, but if you give me a typewriter, if you give me a keyboard, I can probably clock out some words for you. Kind of the way I thought back then. And that's kind of what it morphed into. It just was me writing about this thing I thought was cool, writing about Lord of the Rings because the Hobbit movies were starting to get talked about. And so everyone was like back on that, Lord of the Rings zeitgeist. Lord of the Rings Online was like this MMO that I loved. I still do. I mean, it's 16 years old now. I'm still playing it. It's the only game that doesn't get deleted from my computer when I do something. I just move the files to a hard drive and move them back. And it morphed into this quasi, I'm writing about the books, I'm writing about the game, I'm writing about how close the game is to the books.
Yeah, those games are truly the pinnacle of mashing those two worlds together, keeping the narrative of the story and the world that's been built.
So I always say that Lord of the Rings Online is the best adaptation of Tolkien's works.
I can see that.
Honestly, the movies are going to appeal more to most people.
They're more digestible.
But they're made for movies. The game is using the source material and just running with it.
Right.
So it's one of those games that is just, it's so true to the books, but it's also trying to be a game at the same time. And it perfectly, not all the time, but it perfectly marries the two. This was back in like 2009, by the way.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this for, math is hard in the morning.
14 years now.
Couple years, 13, 14 years. But it was weird because the evolution in my career probably doesn't make a lot of sense to some people, because I went from writing from this little obscure Middle Earth website to writing about Skyrim when it came out. I was working for a podcast
When
network.
it came out the first time, or
Yes,
the second time, or the third time?
The very first time.
Skyrim is the forever release.
Yeah,
re-release.
that game. I feel like Starfield is just Skyrim in space. They just released it at like a 16th time and just slapped a new name on it.
Exciting. Exciting though.
Yeah.
You know, what better than doing fetch quests in space? You know.
Yeah, doing repeatable fetch quests in space that use the same. That's for a different podcast.
Yeah, we'll have to. Well, we're gonna get into. We're gonna actually make the game time segment with Joe a lot longer today. I want that to be a huge part of this, because we're gonna jump into 3 different MMOs and kind of get your idea of how you review, how you break into things like that. But that we'll save that for that. That's kind of just a teaser. I don't want to let you guys know too quickly about stay till the end. We got some extra sauce waiting for y'all when it comes to how Joe breaks things down and kind of doing all the things that you're saying right now. You have an unconventional path that has brought you to this place, so I don't doubt that you have a process that doesn't look like everybody else that went through the conventional ways that editors would go to their.
Well, it's interesting because I mentioned that unconventional path, going from writing for just a small Lord of the Rings fan site to a Skyrim podcast to writing for a family-based website for like one article. I wrote for Playboy for like 2 years.
Hey. I mean, that's
writing about games for Playboy.
That's big clout.
That first paycheck was weird, by the way. Getting that actual physical check, because they didn't do direct deposit. You
showed up to the mansion, right? And you like
no. I got it in the mail.
Hugh
and
gave it to you.
Had to hide it from the mother.
Said, what are you out there doing?
Yeah, exactly. And then going from that to just reviewing games for IGN for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then where I'm at now. And during that entire process, I'm freelancing for other websites. I was freelancing for mmorpg back in 2015. I didn't take over the site till 2019? Yeah, 2019.
Okay, it's 2019.
So I was working for the website that I now run for 4 or 5 years beforehand, but I was also writing for sites like Pixelkin. I wrote for Games Radar. I wrote for IGN. Like I said, I did all of their MMO reviews for about 4 years. And that's kind of how I became like the MMO guy, because I feel like with a lot of game journalists, a lot of game critics, we all have kind of a genre that we're known for.
Yeah. I'd assume that you're an artist.
Like Mitchell Saltzman at IGN, great FGC guy. He can review other games, obviously, and he's really good at it. But people know him really well for his FGC stuff. A guy like Steve Messner, who's no longer writing in this industry, but he was kind of the guy everyone knew about for EVE Online. Whenever there's a huge EVE Online story, that's who everyone would talk to. Now they're talking to me and Charlie Hall at Polygon. So, it's one of those things where we all kind of get like thrown into this little niche, and MMOs kind of became my niche, sort of by accident.
It's a good niche too, because it's at least community based. You need people, you need guilds, you need to be interacting with people, and
it's a huge difference from like writing about a regular game. Let's just put it that way. So I mean, when we can talk about this more when we're breaking down the games, but one of the things that differs from maybe reviewing like say Final Fantasy VII Remake versus Final Fantasy XIV,
right,
is you have, and even within MMOs themselves, you have such a difference in terms of scale and in terms of what players are doing. When you're talking about a single player RPG, there might be some wacky story from someone who broke the game that makes Reddit and makes the rounds and stuff. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times with the community, those stories also live organically in the community. I mean, one example is an article that I literally just wrote yesterday on the website. It's about this huge heist that happened at EVE Online. And EVE Online is one of those weird games where it's a single server. Everyone who plays the game is on the same server.
Yeah.
So if something happens, even if you're not directly involved with it, you hear about it. It's kind of like the water cooler talk of the universe.
That's awesome.
You have people 26 jumps away talking about the story that happened that they may never have come into contact with, but because it all happened on the same server, and it's may involve players that you talk to, it may involve players that you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy, he literally stole, it's the largest heist in EVE Online history. This guy stole, it's going to be weird for those without any frame of reference, but about 5.5 trillion ISK worth. ISK is their in-game currency.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about EVE Online
is
years
of work.
Well, the weird thing about this game is you can convert that into real-world money.
Correct.
Because of the way they sell their subscription fee. They sell something called Plex, which you can buy with real money, sell in-game for currency. People can buy that Plex and pay for their subscription with in-game currency.
Right.
So because of that, we have like a real-world value. This is like $23,000 worth of real-world value stolen. Yeah. This is a car. Someone stole it. Like, the joke was Jay Amazingness is the guy's name, stole Asher, the leader of the corporation that got heisted, stole his RAV4 effectively. But I mean, those stories don't happen in every MMO.
Right.
They don't happen in single player games. So covering these games and writing about these games is so drastically different than anything else that you really have to. And I'm not going to say this is going to be bad, but I'm not going to say I'm an expert in all of them.
Right.
But the games that I do have to play, and I'm really lucky to work with a lot of people who are passionate about the games they cover. I'm really lucky to work with a lot of people who are experts in the game they cover, so that they can fill those gaps that I don't have. You know, I play Final Fantasy 14, but I don't want to write about it. I get that. I have Victoria to write about that.
Do you find time to play games like on your offbeat? Like, is there moments that you get to kind of
funnily enough,
play for fun?
I was reading your outline here, and thank you for putting this together, because when I did a podcast for 300 episodes, I never made an outline, and it was terrible. We did a podcast called Gaming the Industry from 2012 to 2019, 2020.
Okay.
And I think I contributed to the outline maybe once or twice in 300 plus episodes.
Oh my goodness. That was I knew I am not a smart man without a plan.
Oh man.
And I had my buddy Randall, shout out Randall, on our tech side. He said, first thing you want to do is you want to get a minute to minute. And I was like, I can't supply that. But I could get a
rough approximation.
Yeah.
But I saw in here, like, how do you balance the current workload and play games? I don't play games for fun anymore, man. I don't have time.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. And the people need to know that, you know, like, if you want to live in the gaming industry, you might lose your chance to play games for fun.
Well, that's kind of okay, that's not entirely true.
Okay.
Because you still find time to play the games you like, but the problem is when you're playing those games, it turns into work. Because I can't look at a game now without breaking it down. I can't look at a game now without trying to, I could write about this because this was pretty cool. The fun aspect that I had growing up is a little bit lost now because it is a job.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I have to do is I have to play games that are so outside my coverage areas, like Madden or Street Fighter or something, just to like get that feeling of I'm just relaxing now.
I feel that.
If I'm playing like Lord of the Rings, I am like thinking, okay, how can I write about this? If I'm playing EVE Online, if I'm playing World of Warcraft, how can I write about this?
It's all piece of that puzzle that you always are solving every day.
Well, and I think every content creator, you know, and I'm not sure I would call myself that. I do technically create content.
Yeah, you're not the the new like
it's
name of it, but
it's
the original form of it. Yeah, you're creating the content people consume.
It's interesting because like there's a line down the table right now separating the old and the new style content creator. Like I run a website, we do written stuff. Yes, we have a YouTube channel. We just, hit over 100,000 views this month for the first time in 5 years. I mean, but the channel was mostly dead when I took over. So like this has been a 5-year-long process to get that back up and running. But we're not known for YouTube. We're not known for TikTok and shorts and stuff like that. We're known for writing. The site's over 20 years old.
Yeah.
Whereas like a guy like you growing up and like, I'm not going to say there's a huge generational gap, but there is a small one.
No, it's noticeable.
Yeah, but you grew up in like the era where video was a thing. When I started my career, YouTube was 4 years old.
Right.
It wasn't a thing. Like it was, but it wasn't. Not the way it is now.
Silly cat videos and Charlie Bit Me.
When you came of age, yeah, exactly. Or Charlie the Unicorn, yeah, exactly.
Charlie the Unicorn, that's peak. That's real YouTube.
Woke up without a kidney, but like with you grew up with like YouTube reviewers and streamers and stuff like that. That was kind of your coming of age time. So
it was like the first part of my gaming experience is still game FAQs. Is still we're having to go and like go to forums and like figure out things.
We have one of those.
But yeah, right around, that time where I started getting to that point of like where you said you got serious, you started realizing it's more than a game. I could go and YouTube, hey, what is this? What is this Easter egg? All that, all those mysteries and kind of playground myths that people would say of a game, like, oh, I was doing this in the game last night and this happened, and there's no way to verify those kind of things. You just had to play and maybe that thing would happen to you. So.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is like, despite how you approach content creation in this industry, you can't really turn it off. That creativity,
True.
that spigot is always running, like when you play a game, you're probably looking at a way that you can promote it here.
Yeah. Or the most hype moments. So like, what's the narrative of this game? What's the win conditions? How do I, if I needed to speak about this, like from a commentary perspective, like what would be the thing that matters most to the viewer to make it, universal, but also paying homage to the high level of difficulty.
When I'm reviewing a game, it's like, okay, what is this game trying to do? How is it doing something differently than the game before it? What is it trying to tell me? are they successful?
Yeah, that's
and
huge.
you know, it's one of those where, like I said, you just can't turn it off. So like playing games for fun is not necessarily a thing I do a whole lot anymore. And I think a lot of that too is I play games for work. So when I'm done working, the last thing I want to do is sit at my computer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I need to go stretch, touch grass, walk
Yeah,
around.
I literally said to
away.
my partner last night, I need to walk outside and touch some grass. This is getting to be a bit insane right now because I've been cramming reviews. I did New World just recently. I'm working on EVE Online's Havoc expansion. Lord of the Rings just launched an expansion. Wagadu Chronicles is coming out next month. The day before is coming out the same day.
How difficult are these live service games to maintain? I mean, you get to see them. How hard is it for these studios to continue to pump out content? And
Oh, it's exceptionally hard.
yeah,
Well, and the problem is when you don't do it successfully, we see what happens. You know, this year
Yeah.
we've seen over 7,000 industry workers be laid off. And a lot of the reason for it is, you know, I'm not going to say a lot of it. Part of the reason is the COVID bubble is somewhat burst. So people are not playing games nearly as often as they were when a lot of these guys were being hired. Because, you know, during COVID, what else was there to do, right?
Everybody's playing a game.
Yeah.
Some form.
But, you know, now Bungie is a perfect example. You know, they laid off over 100 employees, some of them my friends. And the big reason why is because Bungie's not doing as well as it used to.
Right.
And part of that is the difficulty of not just making a live service game and making it sustainable, but also maintaining the attention of your audience.
Yeah.
When there are so many other games out there that are also garnering your attention.
Man.
Part of the problem too is and this is going to sound like a little bit anti-capitalist greed, but I'm not meaning it that way. But part of it too is these companies, the way they operate is they are beholden to shareholders who don't want growth. They want exponential growth year over year.
Right.
It's one of those where, to steal a phrase from James Stephanie Sterling, you know, they don't want some of the money, they want all of the money. And so that puts a huge burden on the developers to then take that mandate and what if the game isn't as good? What if another game comes out that's just as good? I mean, I don't know if you remember Battleborn and Overwatch. They came out the same exact time, both hero-based shooters, one of them trying to like meld the MOBA. Battleborn objectively was the better game because it was an actual game.
And there's always a but.
But Overwatch had the marketing dollars. Overwatch had the better marketing team.
Yeah.
Overwatch had the glitzy heroes that everyone kind of could latch onto. It had that Blizzard magic. So, I mean, Battleborn didn't necessarily do anything wrong. It was just a bad time. And what happens? That game gets canceled like 3 months later.
Battleborn drops today. Might be a whole different story.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. Because at this point, MOBAs have kind of like died a little bit unless you're Dota or League. But it's just, you know, you're competing against so many different factors that at the end of the day, it may not even be anything you necessarily did wrong. It's just someone did something a little bit better.
Yeah. Or
PUBG, Fortnite.
more resources and utility to really make sure that they could.
I mean, PUBG and Fortnite. PUBG was kind of the game that made everyone want to play battle royales. Fortnite is the one that captured all the attention and got all the dollars. I mean, PUBG's doing fine. Don't get me wrong.
No, they continue to have an insanely loyal fan base and like you're saying.
But in terms of cultural impact,
exactly.
Fortnite is the game.
Yeah, your grandma knows about Fortnite.
Yeah,
you
when
say
you
PUBG,
think of
and she's like, "What about the beers? Why are you talking about beer? You're 12."
Why are you talking about Pabst? Exactly.
Well, my friends, I've loved getting to chat with Joe about his life, how he's gotten to the seat that you sit at currently. We're gonna take a short break with a message from our sponsor, but when we get back, we'll chat a little bit about the upcoming events, things that you had just recently attended, and then jump into some games, get reviewing. Be right back. And we're back after a wonderful break from our incredible sponsors with the man, Joe Bradford. How are you feeling after our little chat about your background? I don't want you to, feel like you went too regressive into a childlike state with us going into those dark recesses of your mind.
I am so old. I've forgotten what a childlike state is. So what I feel more as I feel closer to the rocking chair than I do a childlike state right now. So
Hey, at the end of the day, we all go back to the rocking chair.
it's so comfortable. Like
great.
why doesn't anyone, like every house should just come with a rocking chair.
We were just rocking in the chairs downstairs in the lab yesterday. It's so funny. We're all 5 of us were just like taking turns figuring out the optimal rock path and how much, how much force you have to use to make a good rock.
You guys
know
have
what
a
I'm
lot of free time, is what I'm hearing.
Just enough free time. Just enough. It's always getting us back into that creative space. And speaking of creative space, we were kind of just talking about the kind of magic that certain developers can kind of bring to a title.
Sure.
It's like, 2 people will make the same game, but that Riot game though, 2 people can make the same MOBA shooter, but that Blizzard, you were at BlizzCon.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the magic's being captured again and like they have a good grasp on things? They just were acquired by Microsoft and one of the biggest.
$68.7 billion.
I can't even wrap my head around a number like that.
Yeah. No, I think they'll be fine.
Things are good.
Well, so it's kind of a catch-22 here. With Blizzard, I mean, they weren't bought because of Blizzard. They were bought for the mobile stuff. I mean, King is the cash cow. When you look at their MAUs and they look at their financials
King
every
is
quarter,
crazy.
Candy Crush is what sells. I mean, it dwarfs Call of Duty. It dwarfs World of Warcraft.
Get wrecked. You guys over here making fun of casual gamers. They're carrying you.
Dude, like mobile games they have taken over the planet, you know. So sure, you can make the argument, and Sony definitely tried to make the argument that Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard for Call of Duty, and that's part of the equation. They're buying it for World of Warcraft and what Blizzard brings to the table from 30 years of
legacy.
Magic legacy, yeah, for sure. But they'll be fine. King will continue to sell. In terms of like BlizzCon, it was weird because it was not just the first BlizzCon in person since the pandemic.
Oh, yeah. I guess they didn't run one.
Yeah, they didn't run one in
still.
2022. They did an online thing. They tried BlizzCon online back in 2021, and that was an abject failure.
So here's some skins.
Well, so what they had to learn is people don't want to pay for video access anymore. And
That's true.
For BlizzCon, a lot of the allure was, you pay to go in person. If you want to watch the panels, you buy a BlizzCon virtual ticket. You get some digital goodies for your games, and it gives you access to all the panels. Well, the pandemic kind of taught us that you don't need to do that, and viewers don't need to put up with that. So when they tried to do that with BlizzCon Online, it backfired hugely.
Right.
To the point where they kind of went back to the drawing board in 2022 to figure out what they wanted to do. And so this year, it was the first BlizzCon where whether you were there or not, you had access to all of the panels. You had access to all of the talks.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
You could still buy a virtual ticket if you wanted to, and there were various tiers. They were more expensive this year than they've ever been. But what those things got you was cosmetics in Diablo, Overwatch, Hearthstone, stuff like that. In person, it was weird because I spent most of my time up in the media area doing interviews, writing up stuff in the media room. I didn't really get to go down to the floor until maybe the better part of the second half of the second day.
Oh, that's usually a pretty bustling time, though.
Yeah,
right?
well, at the same time, Le Seraphim was playing in the arena across the way, so I had basically the floor to myself in some spots.
That's a big pool.
But this felt super community focused. This was not necessarily. Sure, they announced some things at the World Soul Saga. They announced, the next Diablo 4 expansion, the first Diablo 4 expansion coming out. Overwatch, they showed off Mauga, the new hero. They also kind of teased the next 2 coming. It was the last hurrah of the Overwatch League, which, RIP. But
really.
I don't know if you can quite say that Blizzard is back when they're simultaneously putting on this huge event while also praising their community for helping them raise the prize pool for their $120 million esports league.
Sheesh.
So it's going to get there. They have a lot to overcome from the allegations that they faced. A lot of the people that were at the center of those are no longer there. Bobby Kotick, the CEO, is going to be gone at the end of the year, according to Phil Spencer. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a little too early, but I think for fans, it was just nice to get back out and see other fans, to talk to developers.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, no matter who ends up running the ship, a lot of the times we've fallen in love with the journey. Blizzard still is a really important brand. Nobody wants to see Blizzard fail.
Well, exactly.
We just don't want to see bad people win.
Well,
So
it's a legacy thing too. I
Yeah.
mean, you have World of Warcraft is celebrating 20 years next year.
Yeah.
What's going on with StarCraft? Phil Spencer is kind of teasing some stuff, so it's getting
Right.
some excitement going on. Overwatch is floundering a little bit, but it'll get there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, end of the day, it holds a lane on its own.
Yeah,
there's
same
not
with
many-
Diablo. I mean, Diablo's floundering a little bit, but the things they're doing right now, and BlizzCon went a long way towards assuaging some fears that these games are not necessarily being developed all that well for a lot of fans. But the big takeaway I got when talking to people in the bars afterwards, because all of these events, the real action happens at the Marriott.
Yeah, the
It happens
networking
at the-
events
Yeah,
after.
the Hilton.
Yeah.
Talking to players, talking to people. The big thing was it was just nice to finally get back. And that was the same thing that I experienced at FanFest last year for EVE Online. You know, it was the first FanFest since 2019. They did a world tour in 2019, so they went to 7 different cities around the world. Oof. I went to Amsterdam, and I went to the one here in Vegas.
Nice.
It was
Amsterdam
just-
and New Amsterdam.
Yeah, pretty much. But that has been the sentiment from all of these events that I've gone to. It's just nice to finally be back doing this. I mean, we're 3 years removed from a pandemic. At some point, you know, we've been doing these live events for a while now. They kind of kicked off again last year. Same thing with TennoCon, you know, for Warframe. I went to that back in August or late July. Time is weird.
It's all melding together.
I don't understand how time works anymore.
It's a facade.
But I mean, that was kind of the same thing. It was the first TennoCon in person since the pandemic. And that is the overwhelming feeling I've been getting from all these events. It's just nice to see my friends in person. It's nice to see these developers and talk to them. You know, that's something that we lost when we were doing everything on Zoom. And it's still kind of that way. A lot of so just to kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit, a lot of the events that we would go to before the pandemic were all in person. They just fly you out to LA for a day.
Right.
You drive out to LA, you fly out to New York or whatever. You talk to the developers in person. Now they're all being handled on Discord. And so you kind of have this weird, we joked about the estuary of you know, moods, you know, hype levels here, but it's this weird estuary of events, you know, they're kind of like meeting together where, you know, you sometimes will have an online event, you'll sometimes have a Discord event, sometimes it'll be both. You may not get invited to the offline event, but you'll get invited to the online event. So for something like BlizzCon, for something like eFanFest, something like, you know, TennoCon, just those being the 3 recent examples, it's just nice to actually get out and talk to people. There's something different about doing this face-to-face versus
Facts.
doing it over a screen.
100%. There's a lot of things that can be misconstrued and miscommunicated as well as we sit there and write things out. So, you know.
I mean, I do a weekly, not weekly, I do a monthly interview with CCP Games on EVE Online.
Okay.
I've mentioned them a few times this podcast, you know,
big
this
part
episode.
of what you do.
But it's one of the
shout out
main games I cover. I mean, we all kind of have our focuses of coverage on the site, and for me, one of them is EVE. And I have gotten to be such good friends with the developers I'm talking to. So it was just really nice to finally see Burger in person. I mean, his name's Burger.
dope.
It's great.
Shout out Burger.
Burgers with Burger was like the greatest thing at
You
Vegas.
you guys
that
grabbed
night.
burgers.
We went to In-N-Out. It was an actual event. Like, he actually brought community members to In-N-Out with him, and they all sat around, talked to Burger while eating burgers. It was great. But it was so good to see him in person after just spending years talking to him in front of a face. And that's kind of how BlizzCon felt. It was so much more community focused, so much more focused on less so much on the media side. They had media opportunities. They had interviews. I got my work done. But the majority of the reason why they were there was the community, which you couldn't always say. A lot of times these were media events with community stuff with it.
Understandably, yeah.
So-
They're trying to make a good deliverable. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
But yeah, this was
Good
really
activation, as they say in marketing speak.
you know, but this was really them trying to make sure that they show, hey, this is our direction with our community. This is who we care about, and you know, you are the reason that we're here.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to add value to.
I do find it hilarious that when Phil Spencer came on stage, which, by the way, Phil Spencer has now been to 2 MMO conferences this year. He went to Final Fantasy Fan Fest here in Vegas.
Okay.
Now he went to BlizzCon, and it was hilarious when he said this is his first BlizzCon ever. And the only thing that came to mind is he had to spend $69 billion to be able to go to BlizzCon before they finally let him in. So
That's a hefty ticket.
yeah, I can't wait to see what he does with this. By the way, what Microsoft does.
Yeah, it's an interesting collaboration, man. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I guess acquisition.
Yeah, I was gonna say not really a collaboration anymore, but
Yeah, they said, by the way,
Yeah.
we're gonna bring in some of our people over here on this side. And
Yeah.
what that means, we never know. But I'm glad you get to be home for a little bit. You traveled crazy. Is there anything coming in the next year that you're looking forward to heading out to?
So It's a little bit weird. I don't really know of anything coming up next year other than maybe BlizzCon at the end of the year.
Okay.
FanFest isn't happening next year because it happened so late in this year. They need more time to prepare. So it's happening again in 2025. I'm sure TennoCon is happening. The thing that I'm most looking forward to are things that happen here in town, like DICE.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever been to DICE, but it's like
I haven't been, no, but I know of it.
So it's effectively it's a game developer conference with like some media stuff, but they also have the DICE Awards. That's always fun. Yeah, DICE, it happens here every year. It's a game developer focused conference, but you do have some media opportunities there. The DICE Awards happen, which to me is the actual game awards. It's the real game awards.
Those are coming up. This talk will air a while, but it's coming up end of November. Is actual
beginning
esports.
of December.
Esports
Yeah, December
awards.
8th, December 7th.
Oh, no, it's not Game Awards. It's Esports Awards that's coming up. And then Game Awards. Are you okay?
DICE is like the real game awards in my opinion because it's the prestigious one. They go into a lot more of the Academy Award style categories. So things like best technology, best best narrative direction. You have some of that's with Jeff Keighley's stuff, the Game Awards, but that to me feels more like a world premiere show with some awards tacked on.
I feel that.
The DICE Awards is totally different.
When Game Awards are coming up beginning of December. We have the Esports Awards to end off the end of November. Mm-hmm. It's a big time. What do you have a contender for Game of the Year that will be set at the actual at the Game Awards?
If Baldur's Gate 3 does not win Game of the Year, this industry's broken.
I'm thinking the same thing. I've been saying that. Been spitting that.
So the crazy thing is we do our own awards as well, but being an MMO focused site, the Game of the Year has to be an MMO.
Yeah, facts.
Which has made me question how we do this because there hasn't been a game that has not been an MMO as good as Baldur's Gate 3 was this year. So how can we then say the game of the year is like Final Fantasy 14, which didn't put out an expansion this year, but is still a live service game? Yeah. It's this really weird thing. So it's actually made me rethink how we do our categories. We're going to be releasing our public voting. We do 2 rounds. We have the Community Choice Awards, which are the exact same categories the staff votes on. But we like to do both because I feel like the Community Awards is a much more accurate barometer for how a game is doing versus something like, because we have to approach games so differently.
Yeah. Industry perspective is so much different than the consumer perspective.
So, I mean, for us, we'll have ours coming out next year, and I'm literally having to decide, do I make a separate Game of the Year category with MMOs and RPGs mixed in? Because
that'd be dope.
But it doesn't necessarily fit the site.
Understandably.
So the way we're probably going to do it is we're probably going to do it like we usually do, where we have Best RPG of the Year, which Baldur's Gate 3 should win. I'm not going to say it is because that would be me rigging it. But by the time this comes out, that'll already be
true.
That'll already be decided. But we'll have the MMORPG of the Year. That will be our Game of the Year because of the focus of the site. But everywhere else, there is no excuse. There has not been a game this year that has come out that is better than Baldur's Gate 3.
It's insane.
So if that does not win, and we just saw a precursor to the Game Awards with the golden joysticks. They cleaned up there.
Understandably.
Yeah. I have given 3 10s in my entire reviewing career. Baldur's Gate 3 is one of them.
Man.
So it is quite literally the best game I've ever played.
Well, I'm excited to get into some reviewing with you. We have some New World gameplay lined up. To start things off, we're going to get through 3 different games, essentially. We're going to
try.
This is Amazon's game, correct? Amazon developed this?
So Amazon...
They bought this from...
No. They developed it. So yeah, this is made by Amazon Games in Irvine, California. This released in 2021, but it was delayed a few times because originally this started off as like a survival MMO. So something more along the lines of like Ark or Conan X. Ark Survival, Conan Exile, stuff like that. And the more they put it through the testing, the more they realized that their players wanted more of an MMO. So they literally delayed it outside of August 2020.
Okay.
And spent a year and a half building quest, building narrative, all that stuff.
That's awesome.
When it hit, it was not perfect. It was not necessarily the greatest MMO out there, but it was great. It was good for a first attempt. The way it stands right now, and they just released their first expansion, the first paid expansion, I should say, called Rise of the Angry Earth.
Okay.
This is the game that I feel like they wanted to launch with. It has so much more quality of life features. It's a much better narrative and storytelling experience. Okay. MMOs are kind of known for the grind. The grind is there, but it's not nearly as bad as it was when the game first launched. And then they did one thing I've been telling them to do since August 2020, is they added mounts.
Okay, so there's some mounts now. What, you got,
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh.
This is like the basic horse. I haven't upgraded my horse at
Hey,
all.
but that's the summoning animation was really good.
I love that. I love that. I want
so
other
smooth.
MMOs. When I'm playing Lord of the Rings online now, I'm still finding myself doing that, the running start, whereas in that game you have to stand still.
Oh, okay.
This is one of the new locations they added as well. So they didn't really change the map much.
Wow.
So much going on this map.
When you first jump into reviewing a new MMO, what are the first things when it comes? Because these HUDs can get very cluttered. These things, can,
Yeah.
you know, what are the things that you look at to make sure that, or kind of your quality check that you hold it to?
You know what funny thing is? The simplest thing I do is to see if you can sit down in a chair. Because that level of interactability tells me that the world is going to be incredibly, diverse and interactable. If you can't just walk up to a chair and sit down in it,
Like that Twitter account, can you pet the dog?
yeah, well, that is starting to actually cause some issues with some game developers, because now they're forcing dog petting into games just so they don't get destroyed on that Twitter account.
Hey, it's real. That's real, man.
But yeah, for me, that's one of the first things I do is I walk up to a chair and see if I can just naturally sit in it. If I can, that tells me the world is going to be incredibly interactable. It's going to be a lot more interesting, I should say, than another game. But you kind of have to approach these all differently because every MMO is drastically different. They all play differently. This is an action MMO, so everything's in real time. When you fire your bow, that arrow travels. It's got, actual physics being affected to it. So you've got, fall off, you've got range and all that. I use a rapier as well. Very high, very fast DPS. I'm gonna go find someone to fight actually.
Uh-oh. This game's smooth. I actually watched a bit of it get played when it first dropped because there was a lot of hype, especially around the PvP mode that had came out. But never got to actually see it at this level. So this is really, really beautiful game. And of course, we got the Omen PC, so things are turned up to 20. Looking like
I feel like I'm at home. This RTX 4090 doing some work.
you had said that you messing with your 4K gaming on your curved monitors heavy though. That's what you're at.
Well, so my 4K monitor is not curved, but
okay.
I've got two 1440p ultra wides that I use for work and I use for streaming and stuff like that because you can put so much more on the screen. This is like the first time I've been around here that I haven't seen any actual enemies. This is weird.
Is this a common place where people will come to grind out?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this game, one of the things it does with its end game is it's got what's called chest runs, where you fight like an elite boss in the game,
Okay.
an overworld boss, and they're usually hiding a chest. And that chest will have like super high-end ingredients. It'll have armor. There we go. Let's see if I can kill this mammoth. Nope, it's retreating. Dude literally kited it out of there.
It was chasing him for quite a while.
Yeah.
What is something that
Yeah.
end games are a huge part of this game genre in general. A bad end game can make you feel like you wasted the past 80 to 200 hours of your life.
Yeah, for sure.
What is like the quintessential things of an end game experience that you feel like make a game really have that replayability and reward you for getting to that level?
So for me, I'm kind of a weird MMO player. The end game, yes, it is the place you're all trying to get towards. But for me, I put much more stock in the lead up to it.
Okay.
So that leveling experience, getting to end game, and a lot of MMOs, the end game is like when the game finally starts for them. A game like World of Warcraft is completely dependent upon having a robust end game because a lot of their story is told through end game dungeons, is told through raids. A game like New World, the campaign is kind of the it's not window dressing, it's the meat.
I see.
Whereas the end game is the potatoes on your plate. So
Get
end game is important. With New World, you mentioned the PvP. You've got all of these regions that are owned by in-game guilds.
Okay.
You fight over those regions. You can control them.
Territory wars.
Territory wars, yeah. So you literally will launch wars against other player I'm saying corporations because I still got EVE Online on my brain. Other player companies to control these regions, and that's kind of the end game here. It's got dungeons. You can use what's called mutators to make the dungeons a bit more challenging, to make them more interesting.
And increase the rewards.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So this game has got a pretty robust end game, but I wouldn't necessarily say that is the main draw for a lot of people. It surely is for some. But for someone like me, I want the story. I want that campaign. How well does it capture my attention and keep me going so that when I do get to the end game, I haven't felt as though it's been a slog? And that was the issue with this game when it first came out, was the leveling experience was so grindy that by the time you got to the end game, nothing felt rewarding.
You're like, it doesn't even matter what I did at this point.
Yeah, because getting to that point was so tedious that by the time I got there, I just wanted to do anything else other than play this game.
You're like, I'm done. Let me walk away.
But yeah,
like,
yeah.
I
And
need
that
to
was
go.
one of the major challenges they had to overcome. So yeah, Endgame gets all the buzz.
How did they do it? How did they go about doing that?
Well, they actually literally redesigned the entire questing experience from the ground up. So they redid the experience loot tables. They redid the actual quests themselves. They moved NPCs around. One of the big issues with this game when it first launched is there was a lot of back and forth. So you'd run across the map, because keep in mind there were no mounts back then. You'd run across the map, do the quest, run back across the map to turn it back in. Then the guy would send you far-flung across the map again. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of tedium.
Yeah,
and then
what am I doing?
Yeah. I am literally spending my finite life on this planet running in a virtual world back and forth. Like, how can I justify this on my deathbed kind of stuff, you know?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the existential dread is real.
Yeah. So one of the things they did is it's a simple solution, but it's such a monumental change as they moved NPCs around.
Right.
So you may have to run across the map to do the quest, but when you turn it in, the dude's like right there. He moved with you.
Okay.
And that was such a simple quality of life fix that it transformed the entire questing experience. And then it, helps that they're telling a much better story now.
Now we live in that world.
Oh,
like,
crap, wrong button.
There's it's not on your keyboard,
Yeah.
You're on a different setup. We live in a world where that feedback is so instant on games, and everybody has, the ability to review a game in a way,
Really.
Everybody is just by partaking in it and sharing their opinion on social media, adding to that picture for the developers. How do you feel like that's kind of molded the industry? Do you think it's a good thing?
I think it's good and bad.
Good and bad.
Because not all feedback is good. A lot of it's terrible.
Right.
I mean, we get feedback on our stuff all the time, and I take it into account too. Like, one of the things I did this year is I reviewed every Elder Scrolls Online expansion until this year, because one of the things our reviewers said on our comments last year, our readers said on our comments last year, was that it seemed like I was getting burnt out by this game, which was actually true, and I didn't realize it until they mentioned it.
I'm glad you see that.
Yeah, so sometimes it's good.
Right.
Sometimes it's terrible, though.
Right.
It's a good thing you mentioned that, because I was actually going to say, one of the things these developers did is the game director, Scott Lane, told me in an interview back in August that he actually, during his workday, will sit with this game open with the chat open, and he'll read the chat. And
That's real.
He'll get feedback from the
boots
chat.
on the ground.
Yeah, it's such a simple thing to do, and it's so transformative because he was able to take a lot of that feedback. And again, a lot of it's not great, but the stuff that is, good feedback when you see it.
Exactly.
And the stuff that's there is, transformative. This is a much better game than it was 2 years ago as a result of listening to that feedback.
It's impossible to see everything all at once when you're working on
and
something.
I mentioned it, a little bit ago with the awards. The community feeling sentiment is so much more important than the critic sentiment. Sure, that's what gets the headlines. That's what everyone is putting in their accolade trailers. Yeah. It's so cool to see your name in an accolade trailer, by the way, or to see something you wrote show up on a trailer on YouTube. Or
you've had that now,
dude. NBA Finals. ESPN. Diablo 4 trailer. Had my stuff in it as like the last splash screen before the logo.
And that's on mic drop.
and I was like, we were at my parents' house playing Magic, and I literally was watching the finals on my phone, and I literally stood up and was like, oh crap, like that
you got your goosebumps.
Yeah, it was great. So it's really cool, but at the end of the day, that means less to the developers than a player providing much better feedback.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and that's the way it should be. It's honest, because at the end of the day, they're the ones buying your product. They're the ones playing your game. I'm playing your game for maybe a month, and then I'm moving on to the next thing. They're playing your game for, years.
They could spend the next 6,000 hours, which is basically 3 years of a full-time job.
Yeah, exactly.
Dedicating their life to this title. So, yeah, I'm happy to see that you have a lot of perspective when you approach these things. You know that you have that foresight of looking to somebody that's gonna potentially no life this MMO. No life is a very common term that we'll use in this space, because you'll find yourself.
Oh, that was a thing that happened last week.
Yeah, you got to do it sometimes. Like I'm set to no life some games right now, but in general, like this MMORPG space is really one that the culture, I feel like, becomes like, you know, you gotta grind. If you spend 14 to 16 hours a day doing something and you got something to show for it at the end on your account, like people will, hey, you got it. Like you really about that life, you know, like it gets you kind of a badge of honor in this space.
Yeah,
Whereas
for
other
sure.
games, you know, your quality of playing kind of will fall down at those times. You play a competitive game for 16 hours like Valorant or something like that. Like they're gonna realize like, hey man, you need to go take a nap. Like, you know, you can continue to grind these raids. You'll be getting tired and things like that. But in general, like the longer that you kind of go on those marathon binges and things like that, like you get a lot of respect and people will say like, yeah, you're goated.
Well, and those are the players that are going to provide the most meaningful feedback, because they're the ones who may have problems with the game, but the reason why they're providing that feedback is because they actually love what they're playing and they want it to succeed. They don't want it to fail. So, I mean, MMOs are weird in terms of how you have to cover them too, because you have to approach each MMO differently, because they're all trying to do different things. They're all played different ways. New World is a PvP-focused, survival-esque MMO with a heavy crafting scene, with, you know, territory wars that go on, but those wars are only participated by the few, because there's only 50 slots on each side.
Right.
So what else do you have to provide to those players who want to do PvP but not necessarily do the wars? Well, there's a 3v3 outpost mode that they made. There are towers that you can claim on the world map. And then, I mean, if you look right here on the screen, you see the U with the two swords. If I hit that, now I'm flagged for PvP. I can walk out of the city, and anybody who's also flagged for PvP can kill you.
And you get scolded up.
Yeah, it's terrible when it happens, but it's also fun. Like, I don't think I've won a single PvP match except for the guy that I ganked because he was AFK from the keyboard. I was like, well, that's your fault.
He said, I take those every time,
but
in blood.
In this game, you have that toggle. In a game like EVE Online, there is no toggle.
It's PvP.
It's the minute there's an adage in that game: never fly what you can't afford to lose. The minute you undock with a station, just assume you've lost that.
Well, speaking of that, we're going to transition into another game. We're going to transition into EVE Online. You've spoken about it a couple of times, but not before a quick message from our sponsors. So we're going to throw that, and we'll be right back with even more Username Taken. And we're back. Big appreciation to our sponsors that make this whole thing happen, you know, and we also got some more sponsor spots coming in. So we're going to have to make out a way to contact us and get some more spots for our friends, because we're in the building still with Joe Bradford. We're doing the thing, breaking down games and approaching them in different ways. Right now, we've readied up EVE Online, which is, like you said earlier, been out for 20 years.
20 years.
20 years of gaming.
Launched in 2003, and it's from a small company, not small anymore, but at the time a small company in Iceland, CCP Games, and it's just morphed into this. You know, we not to get too crazy here, but you talk about metaverses. That's a huge talk in the industry the last few years.
Right.
This is an actual metaverse.
True.
This is real life to so many people out there.
True.
New World may have territory wars. This has actual wars,
like system wars.
Thousands of players fighting against each other.
Some of the biggest wars ever online have happened.
Literally 2 Guinness World Records of the largest in-game battles in history. Also, the most expensive battle in history. We may have just set a record this past week with the largest heist in history in a video game. But you know, it's such a different beast. This is a game that, you know, when you look at it, it's pretty daunting for a lot of people.
Oh yeah. And I mean, if you started this day one, like that curve that happens to get to an end game or even a mid game kind of build,
that's the crazy thing, because there is no real end game in this. It's an open sandbox.
It's an always
you
game.
do whatever you want to do. Yeah. So like you can There was a dude, so the most recent war happened a few years ago. It's called World War B2, which I will not bore you with the details of why it's called that. But it was against two of the largest power blocks in the game. Goonswarm Alliance, the Imperium is the parent alliance of Goonswarm, and Pandemic Legion, which, funnily enough, are the two sides that were in the heist that happened last week.
Okay.
So
they're
who knows what's happening now?
They're the cause of a lot of talk right now. In the town.
But that war raged for years, and there was a dude who made his bones. He only played for 3 weeks, but he was on the front lines of that war within 3 weeks of playing that game. So it's an interesting. It's
now,
an interesting
you have to
game.
spend money to get to that point in 3 weeks?
No.
Wow.
You just you train up some skills. One of the great things about this game is your skill training happens in real time.
Right.
So, to give you an idea, and this is a real dangerous spot to do it. I have 399 days worth of skills being trained because you gain skill points over the course of the time you're playing this game.
Okay.
Which is one reason why it makes it really hard to review a game like this, because the ships that you need to be reviewing to play this game, you may not have access to for like a month, 2 months.
Yeah,
I have forgotten half of what's in that skill queue and why I put it in there, but I put it in there for a reason.
I love it.
But yeah, so I mean, you don't have to spend any real money. You can, and this is one of those games that it's free to play, but it has an optional subscription. That subscription gives you access to more things like better ships, better quality rigs for the ships.
Warp drive.
Yeah. So this is an interesting region. This is a place called Zarzak. It was just added to the game 2 months ago.
This is crazy, y'all.
The actual area outside each station
Hold up.
is affected by what's called the gravity hazard. So if you venture outside these bubbles that are safe zones, these areas, your hull takes 2% damage over time. There's nothing you can do to stop it.
It's just getting ripped at the seams.
Yeah.
In that area.
Literally ripped at the seams.
Sheesh. Oh my goodness.
So this is what makes it hard to play, though. If you're looking
my goodness.
If you're looking at this map, it's hard to make heads or tails of what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm
all of these things that you're seeing me put my mouse on, you can fly towards.
okay.
You can go to.
Does the red mean it's further or it's more dangerous?
It's more dangerous. The red around this means it's what's called a null-sec system, which means there's no security. Anything goes. You venture in there, you're gonna die if you're not careful.
Okay.
Green usually means it's a high-sec system, or it's something allied to you or whatever. Or in this case, it's part of what's called faction warfare, which takes place in some of these systems where you have players who are aligned with the NPC empires fighting against players who aren't, or fighting against players on the other side of the war. So I'm technically at war with two NPC empires right now.
Did you know this game before having to start reviewing?
So funnily enough, no.
Wow.
I went to my first eFanFest in 2017, having never played EVE Online before.
Wow. They were looking at you like, welcome.
Yeah, pretty much. But I feel like with a lot of game journalists, that is kind of modus operandi for a lot of us, because this is not an easy game to get into.
No, everything you're saying right now is like, it's so amazing that these people have been able to engineer that to be in this ecosystem and on a live service game, like we've kind of been saying all day. But it's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a encyclopedia of.
This is the only MMO with 2 literal history books written about it, and there's a third one most likely on the way, because the second history book stopped at 2016 and it's 2023.
Does it cost you fuel to be warping around like this?
No, thankfully.
Okay.
Now,
like, man.
A player-made station does require fuel to maintain, but if you like this thing called capacitor, that is effectively your fuel. So if you have a ship that isn't fitted properly, or you lack the skills to fit it properly, you'll use your capacitor to the point where it will drain and you'll be kind of motionless in space. I just did the very boring thing and flew to another station because I wanted to get a different ship that I'm more interested, that I'm okay to lose.
Yeah, rep the ship. Show me what's up, and then I'd love to have an idea of you get this game, right? You get the brand new game dropped off to you. What are what do you call your pitches? You get like 5 or 6 pitches, or like ideas of things that you want to like make full stories on, or things like this. What do you call those little tidbits, or like ideas, your concept ideas of what you want to approach with writing a story from these pieces?
From where I'm sitting now, I don't usually pitch. I just decide I want to write a story and I write it.
Okay. So what do you call your?
For me,
ideas?
though,
just ideas.
Yeah, just ideas.
Okay.
I literally, if you look over my backpack right there, you see a tiny notebook sitting on top of it. I've got my pen with me. I'm literally writing ideas as they come down.
Okay.
For a lot of writers, though, that's the way they get on websites, is they'll pitch a story. But a lot of it comes from what they've done in game. So this ship, by the way, is called the Astero. It's one of my favorite ships in the game. It's got such a beautiful silhouette. This is an explorer ship, so it's meant to kind of covertly go places. Got my little cloak there.
That's awesome.
But the way that they will typically get on websites is they'll send an editor a pitch. I get pitches all day, every day, and a lot of it is just I had this idea while I was playing this game. This is the gist of what I'm trying to write. This is how many words I need to write it with. This is why I'm the right person to write this game, kind of thing.
Okay.
For me, though, like the way when I'm playing these games, especially when I'm reviewing them, I'm also still looking for other opportunities, writing opportunities. So this last week, I have probably written. The reason why I've mentioned this game so much is because this is the game I've been no-lifing for a week.
It's hot right now.
Well,
Things
yeah, this is by the time that we're talking about this, the player numbers have been boosted by 30% compared to 2021's expansion.
Wow.
Like there have been more players playing this game than last year.
Right.
Purely because of the way this expansion runs, and how insane it is. This expansion's all about sowing chaos, and the last week has certainly been that. It's been incredibly chaotic.
Well, it's beautiful. We definitely, I recommend everyone here go check out some of the writings that this man is doing, reviewing his work on mmorpg.com. You said you got a lot of Eve stories down the pipeline and things that have been going on, so definitely we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And I know that the people that play this game are such a diehard and awesome community.
It's such a weird community. Eve players need to chill out. I mean, this is one of those things where you can have like this massive, earth-shattering war, and then have beers with the guys that were just shooting you in the face right afterwards. It's such
real.
A cool community, but it's also very hardcore.
Right.
A lot of guys a lot of Eve players say they win the game when they stop playing the game. Finally, you've won Eve when you're no longer playing it because of how
so
hardcore
toxic
it
to
is.
ourselves. Oh my goodness. We have another game lined up, correct? Is there anything else you'd like to show me from this game? That's
I'm gonna make a mistake.
Okay. You gonna scrap up?
Yeah, I am.
You gonna get rid of your? I thought you liked this shit.
Oh no, this. I mean, I do.
You're like, but
I forgot what the hotkey is. Nope, that's the FPS monitor.
It's up.
I'm a bad Eve player.
FPS is up.
Oh, it's hitting me.
Oh,
all right, there we go.
Be scrappy.
So I've got my drones fighting them right now, as I'm trying to get away. No, I don't want to approach it. So yeah, these are my drones fighting it.
That's actually really cool.
Doing literally no damage, by the way.
Not even getting through shields.
Not even getting through shields. Like he's healing himself faster than I can damage him. This was a mistake. This is why I said I may have just done something bad.
And he's getting you.
He's getting me. My shields are going down a little bit slower than I was expecting, to be honest with you.
And the combat in this game, when you're in a war situation, can get insane.
Yeah, if you read the article I wrote yesterday, I've got a screenshot on there that shows just how insanely chaotic it can get. There's over 150 people in this tiny little, this is what we call a dungeon in this game because it's separated from the rest of the game.
Okay.
And you had probably like 150 people in an area this small, all trying to shoot the same ship and each other at the same time. So I don't think I'm going to be able to, I'm not going to survive this.
This battle, you're looking like you're on the last leg. You're losing some shields.
Yeah, the shields are gone. Armor's going. Meanwhile, my drones are literally doing nothing.
My guy, it's a explorer ship that you have here.
Yeah, it's not really kitted out for combat. This is what I affectionately call a drone boat because there's no guns on my ship. It's probes to explore and a cloak to not be found.
Try to get away.
Yeah, so that's effectively what I have to do now. I'm going to abandon these drones.
I can't get out of here myself, and I might as well let myself detach from these drones that's going on. Can you just literally leave the drones and go get to safety?
I'm literally abandoning them right now.
Okay.
But if you look closer, you can see the damage on my ship because he made it through shields.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so I literally just abandoned those drones.
You have to spend how much of your income to kind of like fix up this kind of damage?
We'll find out.
Not much? It'll be minimal?
Hopefully not much. I've got over $1 billion in my wallet right now.
little Billy on him.
That's nothing in this game. To be
Yeah,
honest
you
with
said
you.
the last heist was 63 or 60.
6 points, like 5.5 trillion.
5.5 trillion.
And that's just what we know. You know,
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah,
stuff in there that isn't necessarily known yet,
Quantifiable.
quantifiable. Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
I feel that. Well, my friends, Joe giving us a wonderful insight on how he loves to break down some games and things like that. If you are a up-and-coming game reviewer or somebody that loves to operate in that space, I hope that you could take some really meaningful things from Joe's path, a little bit of an unconventional path as you had mentioned earlier, but definitely some nuggets of truth in there that no matter what position you're trying to climb into and things like that, giving a little bit of an idea of it's possible. You can make anything happen in this world.
Well, and I think right now it's even more accessible because you don't need to have a degree. I don't have a college degree at all, and I'm running one of the largest websites that focus on our games.
Sheesh. Say something.
You have so many more avenues available to you because you can do content on Twitch, you can do streams, you can do all of the above, you can have your own website. A lot of times if you're wanting to break into the writing scene and getting into game reviews, we don't really care what your background is. We want to know if you can write. And so send a pitch. Don't be afraid to fire off a pitch to your favorite, reviewer. DM somebody on Discord or maybe not Discord, but like Twitter or something, and just say, hey, do you mind if I reach out to you about this? That's how I did it.
Well, my friends, please let the people know where they can find you, where they can follow you so they keep up with your journey.
Yeah, so you can obviously find me on mmorpg.com. That's where I spend most of my time. And if you haven't ever been there before, we cover everything from, I like to think of there's a slash right down the middle of the name. We cover MMOs and RPGs and some like shooters and stuff and whatever will get us traction on Google. But you can find me personally on Twitter at LOTRlore, basically at LOTRlore and everything.
LOTR lore.
Yeah.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, like I said, to have gotten a moment of your time. I just want to give a big thank you to our sponsors, of course, HyperX Arena in the building. Best place in the world to have done this. Of course, Omen for this PC where you saw us get to push everything to max, ultra. And of course, I want to give a thank you to Allied Esports in their production studio, all my team in the marketing, touching this, making it look so beautiful. We will see you all for the next episode after the new year. This is airing right towards the end of the year. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season on your
You too, man. And if I can take just a second, I want to let you know just how proud I am of you personally, having watched you growing up.
Hey, that's love.
Having you at the house and everything and feeling like quasi big brother to you a little bit when we were growing up. I'm so proud of what you're doing here, and just keep it up, man. You're doing great.
Well, that's the best review I could get to sign this thing off with. We're going to see you on the next episode at the next year, and I hope you have a wonderful one, my friends. Remember, the username was taken, and we're not planning on changing it. Peace!
Did you just dab?
Yeah.
How old are we?
I'm a father.